Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Eardley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome to episode 60 of the Resilient Retail Game Plan. My name's Catherine Eardley and I'm your host as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club. The Resilient Retail Club is my membership group for product businesses and you can find out more at resilientretailclub.com. Today we are continuing with the Christmas theme, but this week I wanted to talk to you specifically about one of the trickiest elements of running a product business at Christmas, and that is how can you maximize your efficiency? The reason that this is so important is that if you have been growing your business throughout the year, it can often come as a bit of a shock when all of that sales growth throughout the year translates into a bumper Christmas season. So in this episode, I want to invite you to think ahead of what it might feel like to wake up in November, heading into December, and suddenly find that you've got a huge influx of orders. It's really important to think about this ahead of time and to prepare yourself as best you can, and at least in the way that you think, as well as in some practical ways as well. What we're really talking about here is bottlenecks in your business. So how can you preempt bottlenecks? How can you see them coming? And how can you think about the ways that you can tackle them? And even if this is your first Christmas and you're not sure what to expect, or you don't necessarily believe me that you're going to have a big rush, these are all really important questions to ask yourself, because these are the things that you're going to be tackling in your business as you grow. Many of the one-to-one clients that I have are businesses that have seen really great growth and have had to really work through these bottlenecks, because it can actually be a major constraint to the continued growth of your business. If you get to the point where all of a sudden everything is having to go through you, this is a very common issue that people who have started businesses as the single founder or two founders together working, doing everything, suddenly you can get to the point where the actual constraint to the growth of your business is you yourself. How do you know if you've got there? Well, for me, a really key indicator of whether or not somebody that I'm working with is experiencing bottlenecks in their business that they've caused is whether or not they tell me they're actually slightly nervous about driving sales. So that might be that they're at a point where they think, oh, if I put up this post on social media and it does really well, I'm going to get loads of sales and then I'm going to have to fulfill them all. Or maybe they shy away from sending an email to their email list because, again, they're worried about the influx of orders that's going to come through. If you're someone who feels like that, then this is definitely the episode for you. And if you're not there yet, or you can't imagine that you'll get to the point where you won't be overjoyed and excited about getting sales, then it's still worth a listen, because it's useful to think about these things well in advance, as opposed to letting them creep up on you and all of a sudden you're feeling burnt out and exhausted because you can't bear the thought of any more sales coming through, because then you're going to have to actually make them or pack them and dispatch them. And what's really useful about the Christmas time period is that the Christmas time period is often an indicator of what life is going to be like as your business grows. So most people will experience the bulk of their sales at Christmas. Obviously, if you get your peak at another time of the year, then maybe this won't be so relevant. But I'm guessing that probably about 90% of the people listening to this podcast will experience their biggest rush of sales at this time of year. So what it is kind of like a preview, because if you imagine that this is the peak time, but next year, if you've been on a growth trajectory with your business and it's been growing nicely throughout the year, and then next year, it may be that your average month is more like the Christmas month that you're having now. And if you don't believe me, I can assure you that I've worked with lots of people who've seen almost exactly this pattern. It's like they grow, they have a big Christmas, and then the amount of sales that they were taking in their biggest month, almost within a year or so, becomes their average month. So again, this is really useful exercise to think about Christmas because it also helps you think forward into the future. It's like your little preview. Though going back specifically to Christmas, one of the key things that I recommend that you do, if you do nothing else from this podcast, I would love you to sit down and take a realistic view of what you think your sales are going to be during your busiest months. Take a look at your average order value and work out just a simple number, which is how many orders do you think you're going to be dispatching per day during the Christmas period. I do this exercise with almost all of my one-to-one clients, especially those that have a real strong peak at Christmas, because I think it just really helps you focus the mind. So let's say, for example, that you are going to be taking £1,000 a week during your Christmas period based on an estimate that you've looked at how you did last year, how sales are trading this year, what do you think it's going to be this year? So let's say it's £1,000 a week. Let's say your average order value for ease is £50. Then that means that you would be dispatching 20 orders a week. And if you say, right, let's look at a 5-day work week, then that means that you would be dispatching 4 orders a day. So £1,000 a week becomes 4 orders a day based on your average order value. So it's worth having that thought process about your own business and just come up with a number. What number do you think that's going to be? Is it going to be 10 orders a day? Is it going to be 50 orders a day? Is it going to be 200 orders a day? Whatever that number is for those 8-week period, then that just helps you get a really concrete idea of what kind of support and what you need basically to put into place to make sure that you can eliminate those bottlenecks. So once you've done that really simple, quick exercise just to kind of focus your thoughts around what kind of numbers you might be expecting during this holiday period, then you can start thinking about the constraints. Another way to really think about where the bottlenecks or the constraints might be in your business is to imagine that you wake up one day and your product or your business has been featured somewhere. So I have clients who were featured on the radio or woke up to find that their face mask was being shown on Lorraine, or that perhaps they have been featured on the front page of the Etsy website. These are all things that can happen and do happen to people. And all of a sudden, there's an influx of orders. If that were you, if you imagine this, what would happen? Where would you struggle? Is it that you would struggle to physically pack everything? Is it that you'd struggle to get the products back in quick enough? Is it that you struggle to make them? Would you have difficulties even getting your parcels to the post office? What would be some of the constraints that you might face? That question's really useful because it helps you focus in then when it comes to planning Christmas, because it's a similar idea. We're talking about your order volume being higher than where it is currently. And then you can start breaking it down into the various different sections and think about what you can do to help you. One of the first things is people. We talked previously to a couple of different HR experts. If you've missed those episodes, then do go back and take a look. We talked to Modern HR and we talked to Pip Forsham about hiring people and training people during Christmas. But the first step really is just thinking about what you might actually need. So if you did this exercise, for example, and said, right, I'm going to be dispatching 100 orders a day, or I could be dispatching 100 orders a day, then the first thing you might need to think is, I'm not going to just need one packer, I'm going to need 2. So what can you do to work out what you need, who you need? And then you can start thinking about what kind of information do they need, what kind of knowledge do they need, and what can you get them to do? And I would think very much as far as possible about not thinking as handing off job roles, but handing off areas of responsibility. So you really want to be able to kind of maximize your time. You don't want to have to be micromanaging somebody with their packing. You want to be able to get people in who can both pack and maybe run the whole dispatch cycle. So print out labels and create manifests for Royal Mail or whatever it is that you need. These are the people that you need to be getting in to help you and then handing off that area of responsibility as much as possible. So think about who you've got supporting you now. think about who you could get in to support you at Christmas. It is never too early to start recruiting, never too early to start training people, because as you get busier, you're not going to have the time. So get them in early, get them in now. And also, if you've already got team members, can you think about cross-training them? So is it possible that 2 people in your team could know how to do each task instead of just one? That also really helps you and supports you if somebody, for example, becomes ill at a crucial time, or has children at home and they have to isolate, or whatever else it is. But any issues that you come across with people during your peak time, are you going to be covered, or is it always going to come back onto you if that person isn't available? So think about not just having people to help you, but also having those backup people. And that's probably one of the most important things to be thinking about when it comes to eliminating those bottlenecks. One of the other big constraints, as well as time and capacity and manpower, one of those other really big constraints when it comes to thinking about your bottlenecks is really your space. So do you have physical space to dispatch 100 orders a day, for example? Is there anything that you can do in your space to improve the workflow, so to make it more efficient, the way that you move around the space? Do you have the opportunity to take on any extra capacity? Do you need to have storage? So some people, for example, will hire a storage locker just for the busiest time periods, so that you can really look to maximize your workspace and not have it full of stock as well. So that's something that you could think about, a temporary storage locker. If you're thinking that actually really what you need to do is move to a fulfillment center, I would have to say that I strongly suggest that you do not aim to move to a fulfillment center before Christmas, because I think that is the kind of job that is really worth doing at the beginning of the year and not anywhere near your fourth quarter. So my suggestion would be, is if you really think that you're going to really struggle, then look to, can you get additional space? What can you do to maximize your existing setup, as opposed to trying to create a whole new, or do that whole big move to a fulfillment center at the busiest time of year? Because it is challenging. It is something that will have some teething issues. And the question is, do you want to be dealing with teething issues at this time? As wonderful as it sounds to not be worrying about having to dispatch your Christmas orders, it's just something that I think is very, very difficult to do at this time of year. So just think about your space as it is. Even if it's as simple as tidying it, reorganizing it, making sure that everything is easily accessible. If you don't have a packing station set up with everything easily accessible and nicely laid out, maybe this is the time to rearrange it. Another thing then to think about, so we've talked about people, talking about space. Another place that you can really think about trying to ease those bottlenecks are your resources. By resources, I mean things like your packaging, boxes, mailing supplies, all of these things. Do you have those in place? Do you have what you need to carry you through Christmas, or do you think you're going to run out? The other reason that it's just simply a good idea to look at how many orders you think you're going to be dispatching a day is you can do a quick calculation. Do I have enough boxes? Do I have enough labels? Do I have enough bubble wrap, if you're using bubble wrap, or corrugated paper? Like, what supplies you need, and do you have enough of them? That's a really important question for you to be asking yourself now, as opposed to in the middle of November when everything feels a little bit crazy. And is there any pre-preparation that you can do? And unfortunately, boxes start taking up a huge amount of space if you start making them up. But is there anything that you can do, anything that you can pre-prepare, any element of your product that you can pre-prepare ahead of time? All of these things are really helpful. So it could be one particular element. If you are somebody who makes or finishes your products, even if you can't make the whole thing start to finish, or if you, for example, make to order, then it's harder to prepare ahead. But at the same time, there are probably elements that you can pre-prepare. If you know what your best sellers typically are, then why not get some stock behind you of those? Or if you're making to order, get some of your elements ready so you don't have so much to do in preparation. And then the final thing to think about really with your bottlenecks is just, is there anything that you can do that can be automated that is currently a manual job? For example, if you have something like Shopify, are you able to bulk print order notes if you send out order notes? Or are you having to do them all individually? Is there something that you can add, other apps that you can add to streamline postage to mean that you don't have to type in customers' addresses into a label printer. You can just literally sync it all up. Where are there bottlenecks in terms of your processes? What's taking you the extra time? It's worth doing the research now. If there are little pieces of automation, little things that can connect different services that you use so that you can just make it flow better. It's definitely worth, you can try Googling if there's 2 different systems that you're using. If you're a member of the Resilient Retail Club, then definitely ask the question in the group, see if we can crowdsource some support for you. But just think about, where are those little fiddly jobs that when you're dispatching 3 or 4 orders a day, it's not a big deal. But if all of a sudden you're doing 10 or 20 or 50, then you're going to need something to help you speed it up. It could be simple as thinking of redesigning packaging. So I had one client who realized that they were having to tape their box 9 or 12 times in order to secure it for mailing, and they ended up changing it to a box that was just simply you closed the flap and that was it. So are there things, these sort of little niggling things, like you've been bumping along okay with your packaging, but actually it is a bit fiddly? What can you do? Do you need better tape gun dispenser or something like that? It sounds like a small thing, but actually a couple of minutes saved per package can make a massive difference when the volumes start increasing. So what can you do with your software? Is everybody trained in the same way? Is everybody working as efficiently in your team? Do you need to have some kind of standardization or some kind of like standard procedures that you introduce to people for them to think about so that they can streamline the way that they're working as well? What can you do about your customer services? Can you make sure that that's all coming to one central email address? Maybe telling people on Instagram to not DM you with customer service queries, but to asking them to email an email address instead. Could you put an autoresponder on your email for your customer service so that they know when your emails will be responded to? Can you have FAQs on your website? Can you have the FAQs going out in the autoresponder as well? What are all of the different things that you can do to just streamline some of these things and make them a bit simpler and a bit easier for you? Because again, a few minutes saved here and there will make a massive difference when the time gets busier. So just think about that. Think about, before you get to that busy time, what could you streamline? Where could you take time out of the process? Where could you just make it all run that little bit more smoothly? And then when you are busier, it'll all just work. And as I said, if you've also gone as far as cross-training people so that it's not just one person you're relying on, that can be really beneficial too, because it just really gives you that security of knowing that you have got your, not just your plan A, but your plan B and maybe even a plan C as well. So some more food for thought about getting ready for Christmas. Why not come over to Instagram at Resilient Retail Club, say hello. Let me know what you thought of today's episode. Let me know how you're preparing for Christmas in your business, what you thought about looking at the bottlenecks and how you're planning on overcoming some of them. I would also love it if you would take a moment to rate and review the podcast in iTunes. It makes such a difference to me and I read all of the reviews every time. And if you hit subscribe, you'll be the first to hear about new episodes as they are released. Don't forget, if you want more support in the run up to Christmas, then why not check out the Resilient Retail Club? If you use the code 10podcast, that's 10podcast, at resilientretailclub.com, you can get £10 off your first month. We have got a lot planned in the club to support you in the run up to Christmas. We have workshops about being visible. We have weekly planners to keep you on track. There's lots to do to get you ready for Christmas and to make this the best one yet. So why not come and join us? If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.